Hi, on this week's show, I'm joined by Emilie, Mathieu, who is General Counsel at checkout.com, a leading payments provider. She now has inherited a team in legal, compliance, policy, enterprise risk. I think that covers it, but a lot on her plate. She's stepped up, joined checkout.com in 2022. And where she was managing a team of 14 people, and she stepped into a position where she's got responsibility for 110 people globally in that function across those different departments. So it was really interesting to hear what it's like from someone who's made that step up, is relatively fresh in making that step up from going from that level straight to the executive position in a company that's flying high like checkout.com. We talk about all the lessons she's learned from working in at eBay and at Amazon and what she's taken along with her, including her network, how important having an internal network and visibility internally has been in her position at Checkout in order to step into those shoes, and how great checkout.com is at promoting people internally. So really interesting stuff in there for everyone. So I hope you enjoy. Today's episode of Lessons I Learned in Law is proudly brought to you by Wordsmith AI. Now, Wordsmith AI is redefining how in-house legal teams automate routine tasks and repetitive tasks like contract review and internal requests, so that you and your legal team can work strategically and work on proactive projects. They're an Edinburgh-based startup. They're one of the UK's fastest growing startups, and at a really exciting time in their growth journey. They're showing how technology, AI, and talent as a combination can really build the modern in-house legal team. So find out more by heading over to wordsmith.ai. Hi, Emilie.
Hi, Scott.
Hi. Thanks for joining us today on the show. Great to finally sit down with you and chat.
It's an absolute pleasure to be on the show. I became GC at Checkout last year in September, and I've been a follower of the podcast for a really, really long time. And I was kind of hoping, maybe now that I'm GC, I'll get the invite. And then the invite came, and it was really exciting. So
it happens. See, dreams do come true.
Very much so. Very much so. Thank you for having me.
We'll definitely be soundbiting that and promoting the series and the podcast with you saying how much of a fan. That's very nice to say. Thank you very much. It's great to have you. So I've given an introduction as best I can, but it'd be great if you could start with just sharing an overview of your current role and company, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. So I'm the general counsel at Checkout. The title can mean a lot of different things at different companies. At Checkout, it means I look after the legal team, enterprise risk, and compliance. Checkout is about 2,000 people worldwide, and then my team then is 110 people, and we really span the globe. So I've got compliance folks in Japan, legal in Singapore, enterprise risk in the UAE, people in Mauritius, the US. So it's really truly a global function, which is really fun. It adds to the challenge, and sort of working with people from all over the world is always really invigorating. So I really enjoy that. Checkout is a payments company, which I think, I usually say I'm the general counsel for a payments company, and people sort of have this quizzical look like they want to ask me what it's about. Yeah. So basically, we do online payments. So when you buy something online from, say, Amazon, right, you have a card. So that card is your payment service provider. And Amazon has a payment service provider that gets the money from your card to them. So if you want to do that, you're in the flow of funds, you're transferring the money, so you need a license or you need an exemption. And that's really what payments is about, that license or exemption. So we do that for companies from eBay to Coinbase, all over the globe, and it's super fun.
Nice. Yeah, it's a brand that I think a lot of people will know of and have seen around. But yeah, just the payments, I think we were chatting just before we recorded, the payments, the sort of technical side of the payments industry. I'm keen to hear a bit more about that and how you got into it as a lawyer as well. And you're based in London.
Yes, I am based in London. I'm a member of the executive team. So there are 8 of us that are in the C-suite and the executive team, and it's really fun. It's a really great group, and being able to be not only the GC but also have that seat at the E-team table is just a phenomenal experience.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm really keen to hear what the yeah, the first period of time has been like, and stepping up into that exec role as well. So given it's relatively fresh. When did you take the GC role?
I took the GC role officially last September, so I had August to kind of ramp up a bit, and then as of last September. And at the time, I only had legal and enterprise risk, so compliance has come to me as of about 2 months ago. I've always worked really closely with them, of course, and I get on like a house on fire with my head of compliance. So I'm just really thrilled to have another great team sort of in my department, and also just be able to work with more fun people.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, we'll jump into lesson 1, if you can share that.
Sure. So lesson 1. So I should say, taking a step back, being an avid listener of the pod, I agree with so many of the lessons that other people have said, thinking about how you need a seat at the table, how you need to be curious, how you need to earn trust. I totally agree with all of those. I tried to sort of have a little bit of a different angle, but of course, some of it's going to be a little bit similar, just because I think that it's one of the great things about listening to the pod over time is you see there really are things that make one successful. Yeah. So the first one, which I think is slightly counterintuitive for lawyers, is that multiple truths can be true. So I think a lot of us get into law because we grew up watching, the crime show on television, right? Mm-hmm. So Law and Order, right? Ubiquitous in the United States. I grew up in the United States. Law and Order, the music, the theme song, right? And there's one truth. Yeah. Or, A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth, right? Yeah. Tom Cruise wants the truth. Yeah. But actually, different truths can be true. And that comes up it comes up in terms of managing people, because the higher up you get, the more you manage people. And the more you find out that two people said the same thing, they're both exactly right in what they said, and different people heard different things. It also comes up in terms of assessment of risk, which is really the primary thing that you have to do when you're in-house. You're really doing a lot of risk assessment. What is the risk? How do we think about it? How do we calibrate it? And there's often multiple truths and multiple ways to go, and you have to sort of weigh the two, and ultimately the right answer, there isn't a right answer necessarily. There's several right answers, and you just have to pick the one that works best for you. And how does that, as you've gone through and stepped into that role, is it amplified? Like, is there totally pressures amplified around? Yeah. Totally amplified. I think that, when you're sort of earlier on in your career, when you're sort of working to find the answers, you're working through them at a smaller scale, and you're not managing a team. I mean, I now have 110 people. I had only ever managed 2 people prior to coming to checkout, and it's just it's a big step up. And I think legal is a super cross-functional department, and so because it's so cross-functional, you really have to take in these different truths from other people. Because that also then goes to how you think about building trust, right? You have to listen to other people. You have to hear their viewpoint. You have to kind of weigh things off against each other and come to it from the realization that people you work with are good intentioned. They said things in a certain way. They did things in a certain way. The facts line up in a certain way to them, and that's their truth. And that's very, very valid. And then another person will have a different interpretation, and that's their truth, and that's very valid. And so creating that cohesive team that people can trust, that people feel like they can bring their ideas to, really having that multiple truths can be true and being able to kind of weigh that is, I've found, a really important tool and a really important reminder. Because again, sometimes you really just want the answer, but it's often a lot more complicated. A lot more context has to be applied. When did you first step into a management role? So it was at eBay, actually. Okay. So I was at eBay prior to joining Checkout, and I was responsible for payments in Europe. I had a lawyer and a legal professional reporting into me. It was something I'd always wanted to do, and it's something that I really enjoy. I think one of the best bits of my job is just seeing people succeed, right? Teeing them up for success, supporting them, giving them the rope that they need, but giving them the support they need, and watching them just hit it out of the park. It's so important to just... The other thing, too, about being in this position is it's a really firm belief of mine that it's my obligation to send the elevator back down and make sure it stops on all the right floors. And so that goes into this people management. And it's why within my team overall, being a good people manager, everybody deserves one. I've had really wonderful people managers in my life. And when people, really fortunate, actually, and when people have asked me sort of, you're stepping into this bigger role, because that was a question, because when I joined Checkout, it was going from most managing 2 people to then a team of 14. And so the question, of course, was, how do you think you're going to do this? And I said, well, I have a really good idea. I've been really fortunate. I have a really good idea of the behaviors I want to emulate. And it's just, it's been so important to me, and I've gained so much out of those relationships, personally, professionally, that I feel so strongly that it's important for everyone.
Yeah. How did you, because we speak to people regularly that are looking for that next step into a management role, and perhaps progress for them looks like I need to manage someone in my next position. What steps did you take? Any steps to prepare for that first step into management, or from going from 2 to 14, which is quite a significant jump? Was there support in terms of preparing you for that, or how did you, or was it just learning by osmosis?
I think it was mainly just learning by osmosis. I was really lucky. So my manager at eBay had been my manager at Amazon. And so she was not only my manager, but also an advocate and a champion. And the way that and then my manager when I joined Checkout was the same. And so having people who can see that potential in you and are willing to work with you and coach you, and you ask for questions that you might have, it really was by osmosis.
Yeah.
And that, of course, also means you make some mistakes along the way. Yeah. I think it's really hard to, I wish there were a manager textbook, but it looks different for everyone. But also I think it's the kind of thing that you can really make your own, but the fundamentals stay the same. You know, support your people, be there, do regular one-to-ones. I'm astonished when people are like, oh yeah, I don't have regular one-to-ones with my directs. One-to-ones are the most important thing I do all week. And my calendar can be pretty crazy, sort of things flying in left, right, and center, but I always have one-to-ones, even if it's a half an hour or an hour with each of my directs, and I have 11 directs.
Right. Wow.
So it's a big time commitment, but that's actually what enables me to do my job. Their success enables me to do my job. And then it's also just that much more fulfilling for them because they have these things that they can take ownership of, they know I'm there to support.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. I think there's so many management. That's why there's so many books written on it, right? A theory around management. Yeah. There's no perfect formula. Was there anything, looking back, you felt that I didn't expect that when I was stepping into management, or something that was a blind spot or a surprise that you took on?
I think you sort of take on the management role. You know, you come into a team, you get to know the team, you smooth out the issues, and they're like, okay, the issues are smoothed out. We're over that. It never works that way, right? Yeah. There's always something new. There's always some new challenge. It's never something that sort of you can put on the back burner, even for a second, right? And I think you sort of think that, I'll get to that point of stasis. And even if you have a really good team, a really happy team, a healthy team, and actually we had one of our checkout clients come speak to us, and they said, you know what, it was Netflix actually, and they said, you can smell good teams. You can feel it. The team feels great. They feel really good. You know, we do these surveys on engagement. They rate really highly. But even then, it's because you're sort of tending. It's like gardening. You have to kind of constantly tend, and you can't ever put it on the back burner. But that also makes it exciting and fun. Yeah,
nice. Cool. So you. How did you get into payments? So when did that happen? And you spoke about eBay and Amazon.
So I fell into payments completely accidentally. I was kind of at a crossroads in my life, and I'd always wanted to move to London. And in the summer of 2014, I was like, I should just do this. I should just up and move. Why not? And I threw my resume into the black hole of the internet, and it was plucked out by my manager, the woman who became my manager at Amazon. And it happened to be in the payments team. And I think she gave me the job. I knew nothing about payments because payments is an area of law that's much more advanced in the EU, especially at that time, than it was anywhere else. Now the payments law in the EU is kind of like a blueprint for other countries, but they are catching up. But at the time, the EU was, and the UK was in the EU, 2014, was much further ahead than others. And so I think she just hired me because I seemed practical, and I could speak French, German, and English well enough to negotiate in those languages. And those were, the main, it was a small team. Those were the main shareholders. So she thought, great, I'll hire her. And I was hired to support Amazon Pay and gift cards. And I just wound up advising on a wide range of Amazon launches that involved payments, really getting into the tech side of things, and just really falling in love with payments. I feel like in law school, I didn't, there were some people that were super excited about contracts law or criminal law. And it wasn't that I enjoyed those subjects, but I wasn't, nerding out on it. I was sort of like, what am I missing? I can nerd out on payments law forever, basically.
That's good. That's a good thing. And where had you been before that? So you moved to London from?
I moved to London from Washington, D.C. Okay. Before that, I'd been in Germany. I had a fellowship from the German government. And then I started my life as a compensation and benefits attorney in California. So I did the California bar after law school, and then I also sort of worked in Silicon Valley a bit. That was where I started.
And the languages and accent. So talk us through
Sure.
through that.
So I have a name that is very stereotypically French because I am French. I grew up in the U.S. because my dad worked in D.C. For the World Bank. So I spoke French at home. So I speak French with a French accent, English obviously with a very American accent, even though I've lived in the U.K. for 10 years now. And then I learned German when I moved to Germany for this fellowship. But I speak German with a French accent.
Right.
So when I'm speaking German, no one believes that I am also American. But I speak it kind of enthusiastically, and so I have this strong French accent and this kind of American enthusiasm when I speak German. And people are, they kind of don't know what to make of me. It was really interesting because it was the first time I sort of thought about languages and culture. And, I went from being in the U.S., sort of someone who has an American accent just with a funny spelled name, whereas, I just have a completely different identity by virtue of my accent and my name in Germany. So it was really interesting.
Where was that in Germany?
So I started out in Bonn. Because I had this fellowship, the Bundeskanzlerstipendium. It was a present from Helmut Kohl to George Bush to thank him for his help with reunification. And the idea was you take 10 Americans, you send them to Germany, they do a German-related project, and then they just they become ambassadors, basically, for Germany in the program. So I started with 4 months of intensive German language in Bonn, and then I did my project in Berlin. I did research, and I took law school classes at the Humboldt-Universität. And then from there, I went to work for Siemens in Erlangen, which is a very small town near Nuremberg, where 30,000 people work for Siemens.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that near Bamberg?
Yes, it is. It is. Love
We were
Bamberg.
there. Yeah, so nice.
The Rauchbier,
Yeah.
and then there's the bridge with the mosaics.
Yeah,
and
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful,
Yeah, we went there. We were in the Alps last year, and we drove back through
Amazing.
Bamberg, and there was a beer festival on.
Berg. Was it Berg?
I think it was August or it was in Bamberg.
In Bamberg, okay.
Probably didn't catch the name, but yeah, it was great. It was really nice. Unexpected as well. We just
Totally.
we just booked in when we were on the route back to Amsterdam, and stumbled across this. It had this massive beer festival going on. This is awesome.
Their smoked beer, the Rauchbier, is really, really well known. Erlangen is also really well known because it hosts the second biggest beer festival after Oktoberfest. So Berg, which is in the spring.
Yeah.
And so basically the whole city are in Dirndls and Lederhosen for
it's great.
2 weeks, and it's super fun.
Love Germany.
Yeah, I know,
I
it's
studied
great.
in Saarbrücken for a year, which is not the prettiest
Wow.
of German towns. But, had its benefits.
Yeah.
Not too far from Bonn actually. In
Yeah.
Cologne. That's winding back the clock. And my German will not be at a level that I would test it out. I won't bother. I'll save you that.
We'll keep it in English for our listeners.
Yes,
We'll just say
exactly.
that.
Their benefit. Yeah, exactly. That's why we're doing it. Cool. Well, we'll jump in and move on to lesson 2.
Sure. So lesson 2, and this is one that I really embraced at Amazon, is this concept of strong opinions weakly held. So I think being an in-house counsel, especially if you work, I think in-house counsel life today, fintech, startups, or even a bigger place like Amazon, you make so many decisions every day. And you have to be able to make the decision and move on and sort of move on to the next thing that you're looking at, because you've dealt with one fire, whether it be slightly smoldering or 12 alarm, and now you're moving on to the next thing you need to attend to. So you have to have the strong opinions, and you have to have the courage of your convictions in those opinions. But the weakly held piece, I think, is really important because it's about making sure that you test your assumptions and that you're open to other viewpoints. At Amazon in particular, they always would talk about how being new is a gift. You see things that other people haven't seen because they've just been there for a while, and so it's something that they have a different perspective on. And so I always encourage new people in my team to speak up, because that perspective is particularly invaluable. And I encourage people in general in my team to speak up. The great thing about hiring really smart people who are really good at their job is that they're really smart people who are really good at their job. And if you're not leveraging their opinions, if you're not asking for their input, and if you don't encourage spaces where they can do that, you're not going to make the best decision for the company. And so you have to have the courage of your conviction. With me, I tell my team, the buck stops here. I'm the responsible one. I make the decision. I will always own the decision, regardless of whether it was my decision initially or whether I changed position. But being able to shift perspective and being able to create space for and also take that input into account, I think is just super important for success for you as an individual, and also to have a happy team.
Yeah, it's a good, really good way of putting it.
Just going to pause for a couple of seconds and say that today's episode is brought to you in partnership with Wordsmith AI. Wordsmith AI is redefining how in-house legal teams work and operate, and how they automate repetitive tasks like contract review and other internal queries, and fielding those internal requests that are repetitive and can clog up how a legal team works. It allows in-house legal teams, frees up time to work on more strategic projects proactively. They're based in Edinburgh, so it's close to my heart, and they're one of the fastest growing legal technology providers globally. And they're really redefining how you can take technology and people and talent and transform the way that a business operates. So check them out at wordsmith.ai.
How did you see with culture and values like that as an approach that you learned at Amazon, or you were first exposed to Amazon? How's that communicated when you join such a large organisation, and then how have you tried to replicate that? Like how does that come across for a new starter?
Sure. So at Amazon, it's the leadership principle: have backbone, disagree, and commit, which is a beautiful leadership principle, because the idea is that robust discussion is encouraged, right? You reach a decision after robust discussion, and then once the decision is made, everybody's on board. And that allows a kind of freedom for people to share their opinions, because even if you're not the opinion that they go with in the end, you have kind of a way to kind of align with everyone, but also that space to share how you think. I think in my current role, there are two ways to come into this role. One is obviously be hired into it, and the other is promotion from within. And I think that I really benefited there from being promoted from within, because people would talk to me. And then you can also then hire people who then also foster that thing, that sort of feeling. One of the best things I did, there was, I happened, and some of this is chance, right? I happened to sit next to someone at the Christmas do before I joined, because I joined in late December. And it turned out that he was sort of like the linchpin that everybody trusted. And I sat next to him, and I was sort of open, inquisitive, curious. And he said, when people said, oh, what's she like, this new person who's joining? He said, oh, she's going to listen. She's really open. You can talk to her. And so establishing that vote of confidence and starting to earn that trust. And then I just repeated a lot. I think one of the biggest dangers when you get into a job like this is you have those blind spots and nobody tells you. So I just talk a lot about the fact that if something isn't working, I want to know, because I want to fix it. I ask people for their advice genuinely. It's not a rhetorical question. I sometimes signpost it as such, especially in the new role, right? Because I'm conscious that it's not just Emilie asking a question, it's the general counsel asking a question, which takes some getting used to and still feels a bit, because to me, I'm still just Emilie. But it's sort of repeating that and then putting your money where your mouth is. And when someone suggests something and it's a great suggestion, giving them credit for it. But also even giving them ownership of things, because you give someone ownership, then it's their opinion that's, end to end, right? And you're effectively saying, I trust you, I trust your opinions, come to me with questions. So it's a variety of things, and I'm sure there are multiple ways to encourage this, but I just really do it by trying to communicate about how much I want to listen to other people's opinions. And then when people have opinions on, again, through this engagement survey, right? We set up action plans and we respond. I've gone through on our latest round for the whole team, there have been something like 600 comments. I've responded to every single one. I put Taylor Swift 10-minute All Too Well on repeat, and I go through every comment. And when people feel heard, they speak up more.
Yeah, nice. That's good way of embedding it. So feet under the table on the exec position, but what's it like that first 30, 90 days, taking that step up from managing 14 people and jumping straight into that? What's that like? Because that's the golden ticket for people who like legal on a legal position on the exec co. What's it like?
I remember, so my first my first 2 real weeks on E-Team, we had annual planning the first week, and then we had an E-Team offsite the next week. The annual planning was 3 days of all-day workshops. Between that Friday and Saturday combined, the week after, I slept for something like 26 hours. Because it's just a completely different mental exercise, and it's new, and you're trying to figure out and calibrate what you should be saying, where you need to be intervening, what the expectations are. Again, what really helped me is that when it was announced that I was promoted, like the number of like, oh, congratulations, we're so excited, Slacks that I got from everyone. So I think just allowing yourself grace for that period and knowing that the person who has put you in that seat trusts you, and that they're also going to give you that period to ramp up. I will say that one of the reasons that compliance wasn't with me right away is because my boss realized that this was going to be a big shift, and so sort of started out with enterprise risk and the legal team. But I think the other thing that's really helped me excel is just having great people in my team. I care deeply about hiring, deeply. It's one of the most important decisions you make, and when you have the right people in place, so many of the building blocks just fall into place. And so I just have a team full of really, really great people, and that means I can just trust them to carry on doing what they're doing, and then that gives me the space to then adapt. And you never kind of get there, right? And you have to be comfortable with the fact that there's always going to be growing, there's always going to be learning, but that's part of the fun of it, right? Yeah. I don't know if this is true, but the whole like if sharks stop swimming, they die. If I stop learning, I just become very, I mean, I don't die, obviously, but if I stop learning, it's just I'm not at my best.
Yeah, it is enthusiasm for the job.
Exactly.
Has to stay exciting.
Yeah.
And look for new challenges. I think we spoke previously when you'd stepped into that role. You said like you felt maybe perception or like people's approach to you once you step on the exec had maybe changed slightly. Any advice for people that are dealing with executives and maybe have that opinion or have that trepidation or talk differently to someone in that position?
Well, I would say first, they're people too, right? They are people too, and they have so much that they're working on. I think so. This goes to my third lesson I learned in law, which is bluff, bottom line up front. I think sometimes, executives just have so many different things that they're doing, and they're not going to have visibility of everything that you're doing, and they're not necessarily going to have the time to engage with all of the details. But they trust you, which is why you're in the position that you're in. And so have the confidence that they trust you. And then when you're communicating, bottom line up front, what's the TLDR, right? Because that's the thing. If they're scrolling through their emails, I'm staying on top of your emails, plus Slacks can be a lot. And so if someone has the bottom line up front and the succinct clarity, and then you sort of organize your email in a way that spells things out very clearly, that makes their life so much easier because you've provided them with an effective shortcut. You've shown them that the homework is there. You've shown them what the homework is. They can engage with the homework if they want to. But they also very clearly understand the action item, right? And the next steps.
Yeah. And they're not looking for something like your instruction on how to take things forward.
No. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that sounds. Where did that phrase originate from?
I actually found it online. I actually think she's the head of HR at Tom's. It's called Hack Your HR. I really recommend her. There are a bunch of really good in terms of thinking about managing. I should have said this in the management section, but managing people. There are a lot of great resources on Instagram in terms of HR professionals offering their advice on how to handle tricky situations, etc. But she coined it, this like bottom line up front. So I'll often say, even to my manager, the founder, the TLDR is ABC, and then I go into a little more detail. I think the other way that really helps is that you're all speaking different languages, not from a French, English, German, but tech language is different from product language, is different from legal language, is different from compliance language. And so being able to bridge that gap is really important. And it's probably the thing that's, I think, maybe the thing some folks find hardest when they move from being in private practice to being in-house. I've been in-house since, I haven't been in private practice since 2010. Okay. And I've been in-house since 2012. So I that was a long time ago, but that sort of, I think, and that discomfort, right, you want to show your work when you're in private practice. And so that's also a way to help bridge the gap and have that narrative, because then you have the TLDR up front, the decision point, the takeaway, the risk weighting, and then you can explain the legal piece later. And then you can be that value add to the business, do the strategy without sort of, seeming like you're the same as the outside counsel that they can just call on separately.
Do you look for that type of communication, or do you encourage that type of communication from your external counsel as well?
Very much so. Yeah. It's super important. I think the days of clients wanting long memos are over. To the extent they weren't over before, they're definitely over now. We need outside counsel who understand the bottom line and understand the way that we're required to speak internally, because then otherwise that's sort of an additional phase of translation that we have to go to. And of course, our job is to translate. It's one of the most important things we do between what outside counsel say, what the risks are, what that means. But in terms of the risk, I need to know the real risk.
And then I was keen to ask about the CEO relationship and the trust point that you touched on earlier. Like how much exposure do you had with the founder and the CEO, or the founder CEO prior to that appointment? Were you working with them regularly or exposed, or had you networked your way close to them?
That's a great question. I had worked with Guillaume a bit. I was hired as the head of regulatory product and data. And so there were a lot of regulatory questions, obviously, that are at the heart of what Checkout does, because Checkout's a regulated company. And so it was more a matter of my work and my results making their way up to him. He wasn't directly involved in the projects, but the main things that were going on at the company in legal, as they will, I think, tend to be in any regulated entity, are signing commercial contracts, right? So getting the people in the door who pay the bills, and then maintaining the licenses that mean you can get the people in the door to then pay the bills. And so because of that, I think word just reached him. And I was really fortunate to have a manager who really communicated that and spoke up for me in rooms that I wasn't in. And Guillaume is a big believer in merit, and he is a big believer in being a good student. And he really loves the whole technical side, not only of actually how payments work, but also of the law. And so he had an appreciation for that, and that's, I think, what led to.
Yeah, nice. Because I think that internal visibility often gets, it's a tricky one for lawyers to manage when you're thinking succession planning. Like we did a report, we were at the ACC conference, we did a report on general counsel and CLO appointments in the past 2 years, and there's a leaning, like 45% are internal, but 55% external appointments.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is when the succession planning falls, like who's there, who do you know on that decision-making front, I think is a big factor for those internal, and culture within the business, like you said.
We're really big on promoting internally.
Yeah.
We have really great people, I think, across the board. I love promoting internally. You've got someone who knows the law, they know the company, they know the products. And if you look at the executive team, half the executive team are internal promotions. Because again, payments is a hard space. It's hard to find external talent that really knows payments versus, say, banking or asset management. They're all really different. I think sometimes they get understandably lumped in the same bucket, but they're very different. And so having someone who's cultivated that expertise, and Guillaume really values expertise, is something that,
Nice. And like with your touching on that, like network, and how important has that been in your career?
Network has been super important. And I think actually networking, quote unquote networking, can be a really hard nut to crack, and it can feel really intimidating. But I actually think the best networking is just, you're going to be at companies with incredible people who are very, very talented. And if you make friends with those colleagues, they're going to go phenomenal places. And then they will remember you because they'll be like, oh yeah, I worked with X at Y company. She was amazing. Love to hire her. I wonder if she'd be available for this position. And so the best networks are, honestly, I think you're the best builder of your own network just in your day-to-day of thinking about, okay, who are the people that I've worked with before? How can I, solve this problem? Oh, maybe I'll call up my friend who I know used to do this, and maybe they'll have some input for me and I can run it by them. And they'll go off and be experts in completely other fields. You think, oh gosh, all of a sudden I need an opinion on X. It's totally new to me. How do I do that? But then you're like, oh, I think actually, my friend of a friend from law school, they actually do X. So they could provide me, I think there was one, and so that's how kind of things just wind up getting done. Even if it's just something as simple as we were trying to get in like end of year bills, right? And we had no more contact at the law firm. So I just went through and I checked and saw if there was anyone that I knew there. And it was. So I just reached out to them and was like, hey, can you help me get this bill paid? Because we don't know we're trying to pay the bill, but we don't have the information and we don't know who to send it to. So just something even as banal as that, the people that you've met before. And people remember how you leave a place. It's really important to leave a place on good terms.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to ask I'll ask for a book or a podcast, or book and podcast recommendation.
I actually have a book and 2 podcast recommendations. So the book is a book called Aftermath, and it's by Harold Yana, and it's a book about the decade 1945 to 1955 in Germany, and sort of how the company the country put itself back together. So you've got mass dislocation, you don't have a currency, you don't have an economy, sort of how do you start? How did they do it? How did they become sort of what the German Republic is today? Yeah. And it's really well written, really fascinating, and especially having lived in Germany. And it was fun. There's a lovely little bookstore in Paris next to the Gare du Nord, which I know sounds like, the Gare du Nord is not necessarily known for having lovely little bookstores, but if you go down the Rue de Dunkerque, which is on the right-hand side, they have a bookstore that's kind of themed to locations that trains leaving from the Gare du Nord and Gare de l'Est go to, so, Germany, etc. And it's just fascinating.
Check it out.
Really
Aftermath.
Good. Yeah,
Nice.
Aftermath. Le Temps des Loups in French.
Okay. Is it a German author?
It's a German author. Yeah, it's a German author, but it's been translated into, I read it in French, but it is also available on Amazon.
We'll share a link. That sounds good.
And then on the podcast too, I tend to listen. I'm not actually a huge podcast listener. I tend to do it on car trips, and so that also means negotiating with my husband what we're going to listen to. But 2 recommendations. The first, and this one is in French, but it's really good. It's called 50 States, and it was done before the U.S. election, and it's about sort of going to each individual state. And, America's this big country, but there are all these states. And you find out fascinating things like, the drive-in movie was invented in New Jersey, which also has the most diners of any state in America. And it's sort of like Frenchies who've gone there and really love it, and then they talk about it, and it's really well done.
Nice.
The other one is a podcast called Wild Things, and it's about the true sort of like the rise of Siegfried and Roy, the entertainers, and it's kind of looking back on their career, because now I think Vegas is synonymous with entertainment, but they were sort of one of the early pioneers of that, and how their career started, and then the whole tragic tiger incident. Yeah. So, and animal training, and that's a series. Yeah,
series.
They're both series. The 50 States obviously has 50, and then Siegfried and Roy is like 6 or 8.
Okay, that sounds digestible on a long car journey.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing those. We'll share
course.
links. Well, thank you for your time and sharing your lessons. It's been really good to chat and hear about that step up, and look forward to following the continued success and growth.
You're very kind as always. It's been an honor, truly an honor and a delight. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Wordsmith AI, for sponsoring today's episode. As a legal tech company, Wordsmith AI share our belief that great legal teams can take amazing tools and transform the way that in-house legal teams work and operate. So to find out more about Wordsmith, head over to wordsmith.ai. So that wraps up another episode of Lessons I Learned in Law, powered by Harriet Brown In-House Legal Recruitment. Now, I share these stories each week to help lawyers of all levels, and both in private practice or working in-house. And it doesn't matter if you're early in your career or you're already leading a team. Learning from your peers or from those who have walked in your shoes before, then this is the show for you. If you find it useful, I would love it if you could share it with your colleagues or share it with your network, or drop us a message just to let us know that you're listening and that you're out there. Feedback really helps us grow the show and take it in the direction that gives the most value to you, our listeners. So until next time, I've been Scott Brown. Thank you.